David, I assume you'll be having dinner at Cafe Milano tonight.
Martha, my expenses don't stretch to Cafe Milano. Besides, I'm more of a sushi man myself. But it sounds like there is much more chance of a political leak if I start eating lasagna. Apparently, Presidents Obama and Biden were both in Cafe Milano last night, and in the same restaurant, 3 secretaries from the Trump cabinet.
It caters to all political appetites, I'm told. I've also just been on the website, David, and it says it's Washington's place to see and be seen. It says it's a gathering place for Washington's glamorous set. And I thought to myself, that sounds like a place for David Blevins.
It's a headline writer's dream, certainly. A penny for your thoughts, Martha.
I'm Martha Kellner in Los Angeles.
And I'm David Blevins in the Trump 100 podcast studio here in Washington, D.C.
On the podcast today, is Zohran Mamdani the man Democrats need to stand up to Donald Trump?
But before that, Donald Trump turns demolition man as the whole of the east wing of the White House is reduced to rubble, clearing the way for a ballroom.
David, by far the most eye-catching, attention-grabbing and opinion-dividing story of the week is, of course, the building of this new ballroom at the White House, the tearing down of the East Wing, which is a good portion of the entire White House building. That began on Monday. We're not even at the end of the week now, and it's completely gone. And of course, there are some people who love the idea of this grand new ballroom, but I would say a good portion more people hate it. But regardless of what you think, it is the main thing that anyone's talking about, isn't it? You know, even here in LA, I was walking down the stairs from my apartment this morning, some guy sitting there watching a video on his phone about the new White House ballroom.
Yes, and it's the only thing journalists in DC are talking about too. We've moved from gold leaf in the Oval Office to dust on the front lawn. This issue dominated the White House briefing. The first 6 questions I counted were about the Trump ballroom. And those questions focused really on who's paying the bill. It's gone up in scale from 650 seats to 990 seats. That's quite some ballroom, Martha. And it's also gone up in price from $200 million to $300 million. We're in the middle of a cost of living crisis, so they're very keen to stress that it's being paid for by Donald Trump and private donors. In fact, they've published a list of private donors: Amazon, Apple, Comcast, that's Sky's parent company, and Coinbase, which is a cryptocurrency platform, among those on that list. But Donald Trump's name isn't there. Well, not yet anyway.
Yeah, curious absence there. I guess it's not surprising that those tech giants, the likes of Amazon and Apple, Meta, are on that list of donors too. Not surprising that they should be involved, given how desperate they've been to cozy up to Donald Trump since he came into power. It also comes coincidentally on the same day that Donald Trump pardoned the founder of Binance, which is a different cryptocurrency platform, to Coinbase. Although, interestingly, when he was asked about that pardoning, he seemed not to know. He said, I pardon a lot of people, which is true.
Can you explain why you chose to pardon him? And did it have anything to do with his involvement in your
Which one? Who is that?
The founder of Binance. He has an involvement in your own family's crypto business.
I believe we're talking about the same person, because I do pardon a lot of people. I don't know. He was recommended by a lot of people. A lot of people say that, are you talking about the crypto person? A lot of people say that he wasn't guilty of anything. He served 4 months in jail, and they say that he was not guilty of anything, that what he did, well, you don't know much about crypto. You know nothing about nothing, you fake news. But let me just tell you that he was somebody that, as I was told, I don't know him. I don't believe I've ever met him. But I've been told by a lot of support. He had a lot of support. And they said that what he did is not even a crime. It wasn't a crime, that he was persecuted by the Biden administration.
With the ballroom, I think the main thing everyone has been taken aback by is just how quickly it's been demolished and how extensive that demolition is. Yes, people knew that this was happening. They knew a new ballroom was on the horizon. I don't think they realised how destructive the building project would be. And that's because Donald Trump didn't hint at that. He spoke about it back in July, and he said it wouldn't touch the existing structure.
It'll be built over on the east side, and it will be beautiful. It'll be views of the Washington Monument. It won't interfere with the current building. It'll be near it, but not touching it, and pays total respect to the existing building, which I'm the biggest fan of. It's my favorite place. I love it.
Yes. Have you seen the aerial photos, Martha? It's astounding, the level of demolition to what is arguably the most famous building in the world. And it's not just the change to the structure of the White House that is perturbing people, it's the way it has been done. As you say, the president claimed this wouldn't interfere with the existing building, but the entire East Wing has gone. It is a sight to behold. That's a little more extensive than his interior redecoration of the Oval Office. It wasn't approved by the commission responsible for federal buildings. Why? Well, the Trump-appointed head of that commission says it's demolition, not rebuilding, and therefore doesn't need approval. But Donald Trump's also very keen to point out that many of his predecessors made changes. I think change would be an understatement in this case.
Yeah, we've spoken, haven't we, about, Barack Obama resurfacing the tennis courts to make them into a basketball court. But this seems a lot more than that. And I'd be curious to know what the First Lady thinks of this, because Melania Trump has lost her office. And in Donald Trump's first term, she was committed to preserving the White House and the structures. That was one of the things that she got involved in. She doesn't spend much time in her office in DC. That's well known. But even if she wants to, she'll have to find herself a new home. And one of the things that has upset people is the East Wing of the White House is where, if you come from all over the states and arrange a tour of the White House, it begins in the East Wing. Well, we're told those tours will still be going ahead, but with a different start point. But obviously, it's a construction site at the moment. And in America, people take the White House very seriously. They genuinely see that as the people's house. On Thursday, we had the first inevitable legal challenge to this building of the ballroom. It came from a couple in Virginia who filed a lawsuit attempting to block any more demolition of what they called the people's house. But so much has gone already. So much has been demolished that it does feel like it might be too little, too late. But I suppose this backlash may reduce the chance of more sort of major restructuring work of the White House complex. Caroline Levitt was asked about that. She was asked if the ballroom building work would be the precursor to more work.
His heart and his mind is always churning about how to improve things here on the White House grounds. But at this moment in time, of course, the ballroom is really the president's main priority.
It is remarkable when you think about what the president has on his plate in terms of foreign affairs. He's just back from the Middle East. He's still trying to find a route to a ceasefire in Ukraine. He's preparing to fly to Asia. The government shutdown is now in the 24th day. Immigration raids on the streets of major cities. And yet the press secretary at the White House says Donald Trump's priority is building a 90,000 square foot ballroom.
Yeah, and you have, him sitting next to the Secretary of NATO, Mark Rutte, and he's bringing out pictures of the White House ballroom, bringing out models of the new White House ballroom. And there they are talking about, the Russia-Ukraine war. I think, though, something I keep hearing is that this goes beyond the ballroom in lots of minds, and it speaks to questions about Donald Trump and whether he has a recklessness and a disregard for the rule of the law. I was reading a newspaper article today, and I was reminded of a speech that Barack Obama made at the White House Correspondents' Dinner back in 2011. That, of course, being a time when the idea of Donald Trump residing in the White House was purely satire. And Trump is in the audience for this Obama speech. I went back and read the transcript, and Obama says, say what you will about Mr. Trump, he certainly would bring some change to the White House.
Say what you will about Mr. Trump, he certainly would bring some change to the White House.
Prophetic, Martha.
It really is. He then jokingly refers to a screen behind him with what he was calling the reimagined Trump White House hotel and casino, complete with a golf course, with scantily clad women, with chandeliers and gold and all of that sort of stuff. Well, we're not too far away from that. He's already made the Rose Garden into a sort of country club. And the blueprints for this new ballroom show big white pillars and lots of gold cornicings and gold seats. And I've been to Mar-a-Lago to Donald Trump's ballroom there in his Florida estate. And the White House ballroom looks a heck of a lot like that, just a slightly fancier, newer version of it.
I think Mar-a-Lago is referred to as the Southern White House. Perhaps the version in Washington is now the Northern Mar-a-Lago. But there's one question we don't know the answer to yet. What will it be called?
Maybe it's the Northern Mar-a-Lago.
Trump says he's not getting into that now. It is going to take 4 years to complete, so he'll be gone by then, in theory. But I wouldn't rule out the Donald J. Trump ballroom being his last dance.
Brilliant.
Martha, over the last few months, we've talked about the Democrats struggling to find an identity of sorts since Donald Trump found his way back into the White House. Well, some of them, at least, are now looking in the direction of New York and a man who's had a meteoric rise. He's now the front runner to be the next mayor of New York City. His name is Zohran Mamdani.
Yeah, and Donald Trump's lips specifically, because the president keeps mentioning him. And if Donald Trump is talking about you, you generally know that you're getting under his skin.
I think he's terrible. He's a communist. The last thing we need is a communist. I said there will never be socialism in the United States. Now we have a communist. So I think he's bad news. And I think I'm going to have a lot of fun with him, watching him, because he has to come right to this building to get his money. And don't worry, he's not going to run away with anything. I think he's, frankly, I've heard he's a total nut job.
Now, Mamdani is a self-professed socialist, and he stands out because of how quickly he's made an impact on the political scene. So a year ago, he was pretty much unknown beyond very keen politics watchers. He's only 34 years old, and in fact, he door-knocked for the Barack Obama campaign in 2008 when he was still in high school. Mamdani was born in Uganda to Indian parents, but he's lived in the US since he was 7 years old. And if he was to be elected as the mayor of New York, he'd be the first Muslim to hold that role. And, he's not a total political newcomer, though. He's been a member of the New York State Assembly since 2021. He went viral early in his campaign for that role for his sort of fun, engaging social media videos that emphasized both his diversity and his youth.
This evening, New York Mayor Eric Adams has been indicted by a federal grand jury.
Every politician says New York is the greatest city on the globe. But what good is that if no one can afford to live here? City Hall is engulfed in corruption.
Unscientific report.
The cost of living is the real crisis. New Yorkers are being crushed by rent and childcare. The slowest buses in the nation are robbing us of our time and our sanity. Working people are being pushed out of the city they built. A mayor could change this, and that's why I'm running. I'll make buses fast and free.
So I can just get where I'm going.
I'll make childcare available to all New Yorkers at no cost.
I want to raise my kid in New York.
I think what he's doing is tapping into and speaking to the main concerns of New Yorkers, which, if you've ever been to New York, you'll know is how completely extortionate everything is at the moment. So Mamdani is running on a platform of freezing rent. He wants to make New York City buses free and to have city-owned supermarkets to keep prices low. Mamdani himself has lived most of his life in subsidised housing. Before he was an assemblyman, he actually tried to be a rapper. And I think what he does is appeal to ordinary people. And, he and Trump are complete polar opposites in so many ways. But I think what they have both recognised is that in order to generate support in places that you wouldn't expect to do, you have to speak not like, a highfalutin politician. You have to appeal to people as though you're the man down the pub. And that's what Mamdani does. And, the very first day of his campaign, he went out and he just asked New Yorkers, what are your concerns? And he went to 2 heavily immigrant areas which had swung heavily in the direction of Trump for the 2024 election. And he simply asked them why. And he found out that they weren't voting based on ideology or based on what party would be their traditional political home. It was just which candidate they saw reflecting their own values and concerns. And that was Donald Trump. And he's now trying to say, well, look at me. I know what you want. I know what you need. And I'm taking it seriously. When Mamdani first started his mayoral campaign, he was seen as a massive long shot. But since then, he won the nomination to be the Democratic Party candidate on the ticket. And he is the front runner now. I guess the closest similar story of a political upset in recent years is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, more commonly known as AOC. She pulled off a huge upset when she won a seat in Congress as a young democratic socialist herself. And Mamdani seems to have invigorated young people in a similar way to AOC and in the same vein as, a young Barack Obama.
He has faced a barrage of attacks, obviously, from his 2 main rivals in particular, the former governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, who lost to him in the Democratic primary, but is now running as an independent, and the current mayor, Eric Adams, who has dropped out and endorsed Cuomo. Cuomo and Adams are household names in New York, and both have faced scandals. So Mamdani has risen well above them. He has a double-digit lead in the polls heading into the vote in a fortnight's time.
Mamdani's detractors, particularly those on the right, say that he's a man that hangs out with terrorist sympathisers who wants to, in their minds, globalise the Intifada. Things that are either unsubstantiated or conflating comments that Mamdani has made in the past before he was an assemblyman.
And Trump, as we say, is talking about him a lot. That's partly because he doesn't like anyone else stealing the limelight, I suppose. And a lot of people are focusing on this up-and-coming candidate. He's a politician on the left in a very different mould to Biden or Clinton or even Obama. But perhaps that is the direction Democrats are going to go as they head into 2028 in their hope of having any success against MAGA.
Before we go, we should mention the president is going international again this week. On Friday morning, he flies to Malaysia, and from there he'll spend nearly a week on the road. He'll be in Japan and Korea, where he's expected to meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping.
Yeah, the pair haven't met in 6 years, and American and Chinese diplomatic relations are hardly in a good place after months of tariffs. We'll be keeping a close eye on proceedings, and not only that, we'll be monitoring what's happening on the Venezuelan coast. A defence official said on Thursday that 2 B-1 bombers flew from the US to about 50 miles south of Venezuela. At a roundtable meeting earlier, President Trump dismissed those reports as not accurate, but our colleagues at NBC have now confirmed that the bombers did indeed make that flight. It seems that there is now, despite Trump's denial, a real escalation in US-Venezuelan relations.
And, I'm sure we'll be speaking more about it in the coming weeks. I'm sure we'll be speaking more about the White House ballroom as well.
Yeah, in the months and years to come, he says it's going to be the biggest ballroom in the world. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week. And don't forget to send us an email at trump100@sky.uk with any thoughts and questions. We're always glad to hear them.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.